Hello and welcome to episode 152 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, you're in for a treat. We got ourselves a very special guest this evening. Michael Domangue has joined the podcast once again.
Thank you so much. This is number 3 for me, I believe.
Oh, a threefer. Dodo for the threefer.
2 more and I get the jacket.
That's right. Michael Domangue, you are here with us to talk about some interesting decisions that Nintendo has been making recently. Most notably, their announcement of the end of the WiiU and 3DS eShops. Not happening just now, but they've announced that it's happening a little bit further down the road. And we're going to talk all about that and some other related content decisions they've been making recently that are questionable at best. And we'll dig into all that, but we've got a lot of news this week. New game announcements from Capcom, patches to old games like Cyberpunk 2077 that have been people have been waiting for. A lot of TV and movie game related news that we're going to go through. Follow-ups on some of the union stuff we've talked about, and a lot more. But before we get into any of that or anything else, how's everybody doing?
Doing all right. Yeah, doing had an interesting weekend. I'll say that. Played a shit ton of video games this weekend.
Hell yeah.
To just stuff everything down. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I played a lot. I played a lot of games. So I'm excited to get into that at the end of the episode. Keep him busy.
I've also had a great weekend. We have a wrestling event. Slam Portal happened at Central Machine Works, and I went to that, and that was so fun. So fun.
Yeah.
So ridiculous.
I missed that. I'm very jealous. It looked like a blast.
Yeah. Shout out to friend of the podcast, Jay. He was there wrestling and put on a great show. His character has practices and pursues the art of train law. So It's very funny.
Very nice. What about you, Michael Domangue? I have a hard time saying your real name.
It's all good. It's all
You can
good.
say Dodo.
Yeah. I'm formerly known as Mikey Dodo. But yeah, I've had an interesting couple weeks. I just recently moved from Louisiana to the great state of Connecticut. My wife got a job at Yale, so I tagged along for the ride.
New Haven.
Yeah, I'm up here. I'm currently in a beach house in West Haven in the middle of a very snowy, cold winter. And so this beach house is the height of irony. But I actually, too, went to a wrestling show just this past weekend. Shout out to Northeast Wrestling, located here in Connecticut. Saw a great tag team, Waves and Curls. Wanted to give them a shout out for the awesome work they did in the main event.
Very good.
Very good. Yeah. Jinx.
Cheeks.
You owe me some Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. My weekend was kind of shit, but that's just because we had a lot of illness here. But we got through it. I think things are on the mend, and I'm fine. But there you go.
You got to do what I do, Patrick. That's just shove that shit down with some video games. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend that.
Bottle it up.
Yeah.
Bottle it up. Let it percolate, and then just take it out on your loved ones.
I don't know. That sounds bad.
Keep shoving it down until it explodes. All right. Well, before we talk news as well, we've got some shout outs. Last week, we talked about the Nintendo Direct that happened earlier this month. And we also talked about Buc-ee's somehow. And then that became a major point of discussion on our Discord, and as well as spinning off into more philosophical discussions as well. Yeah. But come to the Discord and talk convenience stores with us, I guess is the pitch.
We talk about video games too, but yeah.
A lot of people in that great discussion. And I'm sure we also talked about the Direct, but on YouTube, Baylort, which might be a code for somebody. Baylord Estes said that their favorite part of the Direct was when David lost his load on the Chrono Cross trailer during your stream of it.
I don't know that I've heard the expression "lost his load" before, but
I'm gonna start using it. I like it.
But yeah,
Definitely
I mean,
describes your reaction.
yeah.
I wouldn't say lost, as you purposely let it out.
Yeah. Oops! Oh, where'd my load go?
Oops, all load.
And over on Instagram, a friend of the show, Matt Hobby, said, "Great episode once again." Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate that.
So, yeah, we always love to hear from listeners and viewers. So please send us a note, leave us a review on any of the platforms that allow for that. Share our podcast somewhere online. That's always much appreciated. And like and subscribe on YouTube. Yeah. And we've got a lot of video game news and rumors to talk about. So one thing that happened recently is Capcom. They had like this big sort of countdown website that they put up of some news that was going to come, and that between our last episode and this one, and then a counted down, and it turns out, not maybe that surprisingly, Street Fighter 6 was announced with a sort of teaser trailer, and saying that there's going to be more news about that in the summer, and they also announced the Capcom Fighting Collection, which has a number of fighting games, right? Like in it, which is coming to Switch. And this is also coming in the summer. The release date's June 24th. And I think maybe Darkstalkers and is one of the sort of ones that gets getting talked about as being part of this collection, because I don't know that that's been released in a while. Does that seem right?
I think there are one or two in here that have never been released past arcades. And then now also they have like a rollback net play and all that kind of stuff added to it. So it's a pretty cool collection if you're into old school fighting games.
Yeah, Red Earth is one of the games that was Capcom Fighter. It was on the CPS3 arcade system only.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did they say that Street Fighter 6 would be coming to Switch?
They didn't announce any platforms,
Okay.
to my understanding.
Okay, so that was just the collection that is confirmed anyway. Yeah,
I kind of doubt it unless I don't see how they put Street Fighter. Well, I don't know.
They put Street Fighter 4 on 3DS.
Yeah, a lot of people are speculating that the trailer was built using the RE engine, and so that would probably rule out the Switch unless they did some pretty impressive.
I mean, Monster Hunter Rise runs on the RE engine. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Here is another list of games. We have nothing to say to that, David. You stumped us.
I don't know. I just think it could happen.
It could.
I wouldn't rule it out. Although now that the Steam Deck's coming out, do I even want to buy anything on Switch anymore? I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
We are now a Steam Deck podcast.
Yeah, we probably should be.
All right. So yeah, that happened. And then another interesting thing that happened recently is that for Pokemon's Legend Arceus, there was a like modder that was digging around in the game and found a room that is not part of the main game, but is like a fully built thing, sectioned off area of the game you can't get to unless you're a modder or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of is more modern day looking than the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm. It's got like a Switch in there, right?
Yeah, it does. It has like a Pokemon Switch in it.
Yeah.
So there's some speculation about that being maybe part of some DLC that might come to the game, but you never know. It could just be something they built and then scrapped for whatever reason. Yeah.
I mean, it could also. I mean, I could definitely see. Because the game starts with you kind of like falling out of the space-time rift into the past or whatever, so I could totally see like them having an alternate start to that game where you were in modern times and then get sucked through, like kind of like the beginning of like Mario Rabbids, you know what I mean, where it's like in some gamer's like house and then he gets sucked into the game. I could kind of see it being something like that maybe, but I don't know. We'll see. Pokemon Day is coming up, right? There's going to be a Pokemon Presents, I believe.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm sure they'll talk about whatever the future is for Legends Arceus in that presentation. So
I like to think that the original idea was that Arceus started like Princess Bride, where someone's reading a story about the legends of Pokemon, and then you go into like the book or the PBO
now I really
art.
I want that game now.
Yeah, that's right, David. Pokemon Day is is that before our next episode? I think it is, right?
I'm not even sure. Yeah.
Because I think it's what, the 27th?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
27th.
Yeah. It's this month.
27th. So yeah, that's something you can look forward to. And next week I'm sure we'll talk about whatever they share. There's been some like images and stuff. So there's gonna be some various announcements, I'm sure, on Pokemon Day.
I'm just going to be excited for all the plush announcements that come out of that these days. I'm just far more into collecting them physically in nice tabletop than actually in the game. So
Yeah.
Gotta catch them all.
exactly.
All the plushes.
Okay.
So there was an update for Cyberpunk 2077, the quote unquote next gen update that I guess was theoretically to like make the game optimized or whatever for the current gen, even though we still call them next gen consoles of the PlayStation 5 and the series. But it also had some other just general improvements for the game, right? Beyond just making it run on those platforms.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. It's like most of the stuff that people were complaining about seems to have been addressed in this patch. In fact, I'm seeing a big like about face from a lot of people online. I think justifiably so. I think it's about time. I think that Cyberpunk 2077 got pretty slandered when it was released. I think with decent reason, you know what I mean? I think people had expectations super high, and CD Projekt Red was to blame for a lot of that. And the game certainly is not without its flaws. But I've always really enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077. And I think now if you play it, it's way more, it's closer to the game that they kind of promised. And it's like finally a lot of stuff with like crowds and AI, and like when you shoot water, it actually has splashes now in the water, where before it was just nothing. Like all these like little broken things that were pretty inexcusable at the start. They've kind of addressed most of them. So now it's just kind of waiting until actual like more content comes out, because the new content they've added is all pretty light. Nothing. It's not really an expansion. It's really just kind of like bringing the game up to where it should have been.
Yeah, I ended up playing it all the way through on the previous patch, and it was a very enjoyable experience at that state. And I tested out the new patch when it dropped on my Series X, and yeah, visually it's a beautiful looking game.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful looking game before the patch, but even now you have a ray tracing mode available on the higher end consoles, and it's a nice upgrade. There's a lot of quality of life stuff that's in there. Some of the skill trees have been improved. So I'd say
you did have to redo all your skill trees, which was
yeah,
really
I did have to
annoying.
respec. Yeah, but I'd say if you're holding off on buying it, the game is in essence complete at this point. It's really just going to be added content drops from this point out. But if you're worried about stability, I think at this point you could pull the trigger and go ahead and play that game all the way through.
Still probably not if you're on like PS4 or Xbox.
Oh,
One.
definitely no.
Yeah,
those don't exist. Those don't exist. Those were a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been a mistake. Yeah.
Definitely was.
So now we're going to get into a sort of quick bunch of video game, movie, and TV news, which I kind of want to talk about. Obviously, if there's any specifics out of this y'all want to pull out and talk about, but I also think it's just interesting on the whole. But real quickly, I'm going to rattle this off, and then y'all talk about it. What you want to talk about? Netflix announced a BioShock film that's in development. Paramount Plus is going to have a Knuckles TV show spinoff from the Sonic movie, and also the Sonic 3 movie is already greenlit. And then there's the Halo TV series, which we already know about, has been reportedly renewed for a season 2, even though season 1 isn't out yet. And then Uncharted just recently, the Uncharted film starring Tom Holland, recently released in theaters and has been topping the box office charts and making, I think, as much or more than they were hoping. So it's a success. And I think in general, I just feel like knocked down by I saw something else too, like something about the Fallout show that's going to be made.
Yeah, Walton Goggins is playing a ghoul, right?
That's what it is. Yeah. I just feel like there's so much of this that, if there's any of these specific things, let's make sure to talk about them. But Video games are the new comic books for movies.
Yeah, the gold rush has officially begun. The new generation of the video game movie gold rush, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like it kind of happened before, and they all were terrible, like they always are. And then now that like TV shows are actually getting good, like video game TV shows are actually getting pretty good, which I think we have Castlevania to thank for that. I think that it's now we're finally just seeing a lot more movement on it, which is great. Also, this was like kind of a throwback to me because like two of like the canceled movies that I most have wanted to see are Peter Jackson's Halo movie that he was going to produce with the District 9 director. Right, like they were going to do that got canceled, so now the Halo's turning into a series. And then also Gore Verbinski's BioShock, which is like one of the great like unproduced screenplays, and it's like just a really like it's a fascinating screenplay, and the whole thing seemed he was coming in hot off of Pirates of the Caribbean, and it would have been like a great time to have made that BioShock movie. And so that's a movie that I always wish I could have seen. So I'm super excited to see BioShock in any form. I think it would adapt really, really well into a movie personally. I know a lot of people kind of don't agree on that, but I think it would be really good for a movie. So yeah, I'm excited about those. I'm surprised Halo got renewed already because that show kind of looks like doo-doo, right?
Yeah, and the showrunner left after is currently on it, but is saying he's going to leave after season 1.
All right.
Yeah,
Paramount Plus needs content right now.
Yeah, I would speculate that this is both a Paramount and Microsoft decision in order to kind of support the Halo franchise from a media perspective to also ultimately support the game and like microtransactions, and so you have dual efforts to support the franchise on both fronts.
Somebody also in a group I'm part of said that the theory is that some of these shows they really want to be able to have a second season that comes out timely, like exactly a year later, like Witcher. So that's kind of like all in a little bit.
It's like
so
super gamble. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you were talking about how some of these things have been in production for a long time. A lot of these properties were in development hell for years and years and years.
Mhm.
And so I feel there's just momentum in that these are now bankable properties that people are excited about. I mean, Uncharted was in development for years before it finally got shot. I think Mark Wahlberg was originally supposed to play Nathan Drake and then got too old for it. So that is...
So they had him play a way young Sully instead.
Exactly.
So stupid.
But yeah, I think now producers are ready to pull the trigger on some of these things that they've been sitting on for years. And it's an exciting time for them.
Yeah. I've heard that Uncharted movie is fun, but very dumb.
So Uncharted?
Yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah, but starring a human baby instead of a man.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anything else on this sort of crazy amount of video game movie news? Anybody wants to say?
I did enjoy that Netflix kind of ruined the big turn in BioShock with this announcement that they made.
Did they?
Yeah, like the phrase that is like the big twist in the game.
Yeah.
They announced the BioShock movie and they used that phrase. I was like, come on.
He uses that phrase really early on in the game.
Yeah.
We're kind of spoiling it ourselves now.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the Sonic universe to expand. I'll say that. I think Sonic 2 looks really, really good. I'm very excited for it. I'm excited that they're confident enough in Idris Elba's character that he's getting his own show. I think that's great. And so, yeah, I'm excited for them to just go balls to the wall for Sonic fans and do some colorful, fun shit. I'm very excited for that.
Moving on then, the Super Mario RPG director, Fujioka, I believe is how you say his name, did an interview with a YouTube channel called MinMax, and within it expressed his desire to make a sequel to that game, which means it's never going to happen.
Jesus.
Don't you think?
I don't know. It could.
It could happen. Michael, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, because this hits very close to home. I wrote into Nintendo Power one time as a child, and as young Michael Domangue, I was like, "Hey, I really love Super Mario RPG. Are you going to make another one?" And they wrote back and said, "Yes, we are currently working on Super Mario RPG 2." And that game became Paper Mario, which is not a sequel to Super Mario RPG, no matter how many times people tell you it is not. So they disappointed me once. I will not get fooled again.
This was I just heard kind of highlights from this interview, but it was kind of like I did like that he was like, hey, I'm gonna be retiring soon and I want to make one more game and I want it to be this game, you know what I mean? And he's like, and not only was he like, I want it to be this game, but he was like, I know what I would do for it, I've already got ideas for it, and I'm not talking about Mario and Luigi, I'm not talking about Paper Mario, I've got a whole idea for something I would do with like the characters from Super Mario RPG. And so like he's ready to go, you know. And I mean, it's like I just love when this happens, when like creators of stuff want to get things done, they just talk about it online, so like people will have it in the ether and people will just start, you know, it's like, hey, maybe if we just talk about it enough, Nintendo will listen and let us do it, you know. But anyway, I hope he gets to do it before he retires, because that would be a cool retirement game.
I hope so too, but don't you think, because I feel like this has been discussed in regards to Paper Mario and stuff, that Nintendo has like a really narrow vision for how they want Mario and Mario characters to be presented, and that would be outside of it, maybe.
Yeah, that's why they have Mario throwing his brother into an electric fence in the upcoming Super Mario Strikers game.
All right,
let's see it. How does Square build a relationship with Nintendo? How Ubisoft has the relationship with Nintendo?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They come in with a good pitch, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean this last Direct I felt like had like 5 different Square games announced, you know? So it's like, you got to think that relationship's pretty strong right
Confirmed.
now. Okay, that's not what
I switched my view. But while we're talking about Square, I admit that I don't know a lot about this news item, so I'm going to throw it to David. But apparently, there's been some discussion about Square making more of these HD 2D games, a la Live Alive. Is that correct?
Live Alive, but yes,
I try really hard.
Look, we had to just guess at it for 20 years, and we're just now getting confirmation. So it's not. I don't blame you. But yeah, I mean, basically, Asano is the studio that put together Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, and they basically have confirmed that they will be making more HD 2D games. And so, and apparently they had put together some sort of list of old Famicom RPGs, like popular 16-bit era Square RPGs, that would be good for this. And they say they have a list of games that they want to do, right? And so I think that just is begging the Chrono Trigger hopes, right? Like we talked about last week. And I mean, I honestly really, really think that's the next one. You know what I mean? Nintendo Life just put up a video today talking about how they think that they're theorizing or speculating that it's going to be Tokyo RPG Factory that's making a Chrono Trigger remake. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be HD 2D because people are very particular about Chrono Trigger, and it's like kind of a perfect game, right? And so you don't really need to fuck with it. Just kind of take it like this and make it like that, you know, give it a little bit of depth. For
the podcast listeners, David had his hands together and then slightly moved them away from each other.
I made my hands HD 2D. But I mean, you know, we've got Dragon Quest 3 coming in the HD 2D style. We've got Live Alive coming. So I'm just excited to hear that they're not giving up on this, and that we might see even more localized RPGs or just classic RPGs being re-released.
Moving on, there's been a little bit of an update in the Activision Blizzard quote unquote union busting or union discussion for the Raven software QA workers who were trying to start a union. There has been a hearing going on with the National Labor Review Board. In part, what happened is that Activision Blizzard took the QA workers and like changed their positions, like did what I'm using air quotes here, embedded them in other teams. So kind of like got rid of it, like reorganized
like the department or whatever.
Yeah, like reorganized the whole thing.
So they
that
like
there's not
gerrymandered their own workforce.
Oh no.
yeah.
That's really
So you know that
That's
it basically like kind of reclassified them, so they're not QA workers, so they can't have a QA workers union, more or less. So that obviously feels like union busting in a sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's been any sort of result of this hearing. I think the hearing is ended. But I'm sure we will be talking more about this as it goes on.
They're getting more creative.
Yeah.
On ways to shut these things down.
Super complicated with all of the acquisition and all of that, because that's not like a done deal too, right? Isn't there?
Yeah, the FTC is currently investigating, I think, the Activision Blizzard deal.
Yeah, there's another rumor that Microsoft started those negotiations like 2 or 3 days after the Bobby Kotick stuff. Accusations came out.
That's what I would imagine.
Yeah. It seemed like a good time to swoop in.
Yeah.
So more on that as we hear about it. And then this is another one I didn't see, but my understanding here, and I'll throw this to you, David, is that Retro Studios, who's making Metroid Prime 4, who is not very public facing, right? They don't make a lot
secretive company.
Don't make a lot of announcements and all that. I mean, kind of Nintendo like. But they've changed their header on Twitter, and so everybody's going nuts, right?
Yeah. They just changed the header to like a new image of Samus, basically, that has never been seen before. It's like a fresh render, and so everybody was like kind of going crazy because this was sort of the first official image of, be it concept art or key art or whatever, from what is assumed to be Metroid Prime 4, or at least some Metroid project that they're working on. Could be the Prime remake if that is happening over there, as rumors have said. And they updated their website on their like careers page and on the main website with another image of Samus as well. And so I think people are just lapping up any bit of retro news they can at the moment. I do know right now, YouTube podcast interviews with ex-retro employees are off the charts. Lots of ex-retro employees telling all right now on YouTube. So maybe we'll have to get on that too.
Yeah, and like they posted a job of like a recruiter too, right? Which makes you think they're still hiring for a lot of stuff.
They need to hire somebody to hire people for a game that's of course coming out this holiday, right?
Of course, that's why we got this render, right? So yeah, we'll see how that. We'll talk about that game
this holiday. Retro's going to drop Metroid Prime Remake, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Metroid Prime 4, and whatever they were working on before they got put onto Metroid Prime 4. Okay, they've got all these teams. They're all working on this stuff at the same time, and it's all coming out Christmas Day. Okay,
fuck it. We're going Star Fox Grand Prix. We're going Excite Bike 99.
Excite Bike 99.
We're just going to do everything. Let's just aim for the stars.
Donkey Kong Kart 7 tracks.
Mother 4.
Mother 4.
Donkey Konga Beatles edition.
Too much.
All right. So one of the things that people have sometimes complained about on the Switch is no Netflix, and other video services have kind of entered onto the Switch. Like there's Hulu, and I think there's some other ones now. You can have Twitch on your Switch now, and apparently a really terrible version of Twitch.
Oh yeah.
But it's there. And now Crunchyroll is going to be available on the Nintendo Switch.
It's out now?
It's out now, yeah. Okay, There you go. It's out now. Go get Crunchyroll on your Switch if you subscribe to Crunchyroll, which Crunchyroll is what? The anime, the Netflix of anime shows, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, it's Crunchyroll and Funimation are the two anime specific apps, and they're both on the Switch now. So anime fans
Rejoice.
who have a nice OLED, they can rest next to their head in their bed while they sleep. There you go.
I'm happy for them.
And then, there's been all this talk or not, there hasn't been talk about this Detective Pikachu sequel game that's coming to the Switch. It was sort of officially announced in like a weird press release or something a long time ago, and there's just not been a whole lot of talk about it at any of the Pokemon presents that we've gotten. But it sounds like it is still in active development because of some job listings. Is that correct?
Yeah, on the creatures.co.jp website, there's information there basically saying that they're hiring they're trying to bulk up their staff specifically for a Detective Pikachu sequel. So just a little bit of confirmation that this game is not vaporware. It is coming at some point.
Holiday.
Yeah, it's coming this holiday, and it's happening right here in Austin, Texas, at Retro Studios. No, but
just fuck it. We're going Detective Pikachu 99. You try to solve clues and discover shit as fast as possible.
Yeah, you send things that you can point and click at to the other people. Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, I'm excited for that. You have to think if they've been working on it for this long, they've got something kind of cool cooked up. Maybe something that expands on the original game quite a bit. So,
and then heading into news that is sort of related to our main topic, we had previously heard from Nintendo that The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is going to be released in February this month for the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscribers who get Nintendo 64 games. And that game is coming out specifically on February 25th. So not too long after this episode releases, you'll be able to hop on your Switch and play Majora's Mask if you pay the extra money for the expansion pack. So that's going to happen. And that kind of ties into what we're talking about because that's the model that Nintendo is using on the Switch for these older games to release. But back in the Wii U days, they had a sort of a different model. And it was recently announced that the Wii U and 3DS eShops will be closing. Not until 2023. Not until roughly a year from now, right?
Yeah.
Technically, right? We're going to talk all about this in our main topic. So just quickly, they're going to be shutting them down in about a year, but you got to hop on it now because pretty soon you won't be able to add funds, right? And
right.
That's May.
So the way it's going to work is like this May, they're going to shut off the ability to add, to basically buy games with a credit card, right? Like adding funds with a credit card through your 3DS or Wii U, right? Then in August, they're going to take away the ability to open up the 3DS or Wii U and punch in a gift card code. That will be taken away in August. Now, purchases can still be made through next March, but they'll have to use the kind of shared basically it went from like a just console specific account to like my Nintendo account, right? And so now if you have your My Nintendo account linked to those old systems, if you like add money into the Switch eShop or something like that, that still shows up as usable money on there. So basically through March, you can use that shared kind of Nintendo points, Nintendo bucks bank or whatever, right? But if you don't have that set up and connected, like that's definitely something you want to do now if you're going to want to be able to purchase games until next year. If that sounds convoluted and like bullshit, it certainly is.
Which we'll get into. I don't know. I don't know if
should we not editorialize just yet? Is that the main topic?
I think so. Yeah. I think we'll save the editorializing because that's the point of the main topic. But factually, correct me if I'm wrong. However, despite all of that, there is there an end date? There's the eShops will still be available beyond March of 2023 to like re-download games. If you have deleted them for space purposes or you get a new Wii U or something like that, right? Like you'll still be able to access it. We don't have an end date for that.
Yeah, they've said indefinitely.
Foreseeable
fact-
future, I think, is the word.
Yeah, foreseeable future. And so, which I can see pretty fucking far, Nintendo. So let's play that game.
I can count high.
How about Googleplex years? Anyway, I will say something that I was misinformed on before is that you actually can still re-download stuff on the Wii and the DS, even though the Nintendo like Wi-Fi whatever stuff, like that whole service is shut down. They actually did keep their word there. It's like, even if you bought stuff a while ago on the Wii, you can re-download any of that stuff now. So it's like, it has to be tied to that system, obviously, because that's how they did it back then. But I do expect them to actually keep these servers up, which obviously begs the question as to why they're shutting off the service at all.
Which we will talk about, unless anybody else has any other factual information they want to impart now.
We're fair and balanced here at Super Switch Headz.
Audio listeners, Michael Domangue is shaking his head in a way that amuses me. But that's it for the news and rumors section. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will definitely editorialize about the WiiU and 3DS eShops closing, and about some related decisions that Nintendo has been making to having their content available online, and how they make their content available, and that sort of thing, when we come back. So we are back, and we are talking this week about some of Nintendo's recent decisions regarding sharing its content and regarding your ability to purchase and access certain things.
Oh boy, it's a fuck Nintendo episode.
Woohoo!
So we'll start with the big one that happened. Well, there's a couple things that happened this week, but the big one that we were just talking about before the break, which is the WiiU and 3DS eShops closing. We kind of gave the facts of it in the news section. So if you jumped ahead and you want to know those facts, you can go back just a few minutes and hear those. Now we're going to kind of talk about our opinions about this, and thoughts and feelings. Right? Does anybody want to jump out and start this conversation? How do we feel about this news?
Mikey Dodo, we seem to bring you on the podcast whenever there's an issue with game preservation or Nintendo's lack thereof. What are your thoughts on this?
Am I surprised? No. Am I disappointed? Of course. Is this just the nature of digital gaming today, where stores are shut down? Kind of is, but at the same time, when you think about how many titles are just not available anywhere else, the number of titles, the breadth of titles, the amount of classic titles that have yet to be moved over to the Switch, it is incredibly disheartening to see all of those get thrown away. And Nintendo's response, I famously, in case you haven't mentioned, there was a Q&A that Nintendo posted where they originally had a question of, in their own words, does Nintendo not have an obligation to preserve these classic games? And Nintendo's own response to their own question was, not really. And we have no plans to offer these titles in another form.
And then they took it down, right?
And then they took down their own question because I guess they thought it was too sensitive. But it's an honest question. Does Nintendo not have an obligation to preserve their history in a way that consumers can access through legitimate means? And I'll get to other means later. But legitimate means, you're going to see a lot of titles be no longer available in just less than a year, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's something like 1,700 games or something like that between both platforms will just be no longer accessible in any legal form. This is terrible, I think. I mean, you just said, Michael, that this is kind of the nature of a digital trending towards digital platforms for these companies. And while on one hand, I think that you are right, and I think inevitably you are right, I think all servers eventually will go down. Look at Xbox Live Arcade, right? For the Xbox 360, that launched in 2004, and those servers are still up. And you could still buy Xbox 360 games online, right? Like, and not only the backwards compat games like through like on the Series X or whatever, like you can buy them through the Xbox Live Arcade store, right? And so like not everybody has to shut them down, right? And how much does it really cost, at the end of the day to keep something up like that? I mean, I'm sure they've crunched numbers and it's makes more sense to pull them down, but I mean, the fucking Wii U is less than 10 years old, right? So I think that it's like massively irresponsible. And people will say like, oh, well, you didn't support the Wii U when it was out. The Wii U sold a very low amount. Well, they're also discontinuing the 3DS store. And there are like, 70 million 3DSs out there. So that's 70 million paying customers that will suddenly no longer have access to purchase games on the system that they bought. That they maybe bought big SD cards for, so they could like download games, right? And tons of games that you are never going to get ported to anything other than a system with two screens, like the 3DS or the DS, right? And so all Nintendo here is doing is driving people towards an inflated physical games reselling market, right? They're just all these games are just going to jump up in value, and some schmuck who owns them is going to make a bunch of money by selling them to somebody else who that's the only way they can get them legally, right? Or they're moving them towards piracy, right? And in an era where Nintendo is, putting fucking people away for 3 years in prison for enabling piracy on their consoles, I think that it's very hypocritical to not give any other avenue in which to play these games.
I think that's well said. I think putting those two things in juxtaposition is a really good point to be made.
Yeah. My frustration lies with the questions that I ask myself and that I think about Nintendo, knowing that these eShops are closing. It's, why are they closing? What are they going to do about it? And it's coupled with the fact that Q3 2022, they made $1.7 billion in profit. So knowing that they're making billions of dollars in profit and they're knowingly shutting down access to their digital library and digital games without having any kind of means to play these games, and knowing that they have the money to create the avenues, the marketplace to purchase these things in some way, that's where my frustration lies mostly, because they have the money.
It's very frustrating. And I mean, and Sony said they were going to do this too. Remember, like a year ago, Sony was like, we're shutting down the PS3 and the Vita libraries. And there was massive fan backlash. And then like the next day, Jim Ryan himself was like, oops, sorry, that was a bad move. And then they undid it. Right. And the fucking Wii U is way more recent than the PS3. Right. And they're shutting that down. And there's not a peep from Nintendo on any, that any backlash is going to change anything. Right. So it's a sad day, I think.
I know we'll never know maybe exactly why, but David, you said they've crunched the numbers, which I'm sure they have. And then Matthew also asked why, right? So what do you think, like, maybe the intangibles are? Maybe there's reasons they're doing it that aren't just numbers, right? Are they doing it to drive more people to the Switch? Are they doing it because that's just how they roll? They will always want to kind of shut all the things down and only have new things. It's like a sort of a mentality.
I can only speculate. I do know there is talk of the server infrastructure being updated and that there is new online servers being put in place for future Switch titles. And it may be them just depreciating old servers that they don't want to maintain. And once again, I could get that and I can understand that from a business or technology perspective. But going to a previous point, what is the cost of maintaining those old servers and spinning up the new ones? I can't imagine it's going to bring that much of a difference on their bottom line to do so. But I do know that new servers are getting spun up.
I mean, what would stop? I mean, I don't see why the solution is to just get rid of everything from the internet forever than to migrate stuff to a new server, right? Like, doesn't that make sense? I mean, like it doesn't need to be like super powerful. I mean, how many people are like grabbing Wii U games like every day, right? I mean, now I bet the numbers have gone up quite a bit, right? Now that they've announced this. I did a stream on the other day where I cruised the WiiU eShop and looked for stuff, right? So I don't know. It definitely, it just reminds me of like all the faux pas that like, you know, like whenever Xbox was talking about, whenever the Xbox One was just announced, they had like all these faux pas about like, oh, well, you're always going to be online. And like, if you want old games, play them on the Xbox 360 and shit like that. Or even when, you know, Sony was like, why would you play Gran Turismo 2 when you could play Gran Turismo 7 or whatever, right? It's like, it's just like this devaluing of, you know, legacy content, right? It's like, I feel like the disconnect here is like viewing your legacy content and like old games that you've made purely as numbers, as profitability, rather than like the pieces of art and history that they are, right? It's like, I think that if you shift your focus and start to see it more as its value for customers outside of just monetary gain and more like cultural impact, you know, you start to see that this is a massive mistake.
I think if you look historically, it's a mistake that's been done so many times before. The film industry took 70, 80 years before they realized that film preservation was something they needed to focus on. The BBC taped over so many of their old TV shows that are now lost to time because they thought that the tape was more valuable than what was on it. These are business mistakes that keep getting made over and over. And I just don't think Nintendo has the creativity. And that's a weird thing for me to say about Nintendo, but I don't think they have the business creativity to find a way to make these older titles profitable in a way that works for them. You know, Xbox and is really the gold standard right now of the three major platform holders of keeping that content relevant generation after generation. But it took them a lot of work to get there.
That's true.
Nintendo would have to come up with, you know, I know a lot of people are just like, bring back the virtual console. But they don't think that is the answer for them, and subscriptions and online is the route to go. But they could be far more aggressive in adding content to the Switch, even under that subscription model, than what they're doing right now. The fact that Majora's Mask is the only big Nintendo 64 announcement in an entire month doesn't sit well with me. There's a lot more 64 titles they can be throwing on there. There's the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance library that hasn't been touched at all on the Switch, that they're leaving for platformers to do remasters of rather than just releasing the original titles. There's a lot more creativity they could show and how to treat these older games and make them available at a reasonable price. You know, I think a lot of people are willing to pay $5-10 rather than go through illegal means to get them. I think a lot of people would be happy paying for these things if they were just offered them.
Yeah, that's the biggest gut punch, I think, is losing the virtual console for good, right? Like when we lost the Wii virtual console, that was rough because the Wii had the most robust virtual console outside of handhelds, right? It didn't have Game Boy Advance on it, didn't have Game Boy, right? But it was very robust in the Super Nintendo and NES department and lots of other consoles as well, even Genesis and TurboGrafx and whatever. But it's like losing Game Boy on 3DS, losing Game Boy Advance on Wii U with zero avenue with which to get these. Not even counting like all the Super Nintendo and Genesis and whatever games that are in NSO, right? Like there are systems that aren't even in, and we have zero indication if those will ever come, right? You know, you hope so. You have to think that maybe one day, but it's also just like that was the last way to not pirate games. You know what I mean? Like seriously, like you know, like when Metroid Dread was coming out, right? Like you saw the fucking sales of Fusion and Zero Mission shoot up to the top of the charts on the Wii U, right? And it was easy to be, I mean, it wasn't easy because it's like not that many people owned a Wii U, but it's like when we're talking about a new Metroid game coming out, we're like, hey, you can go play these games. Go get it on the Wii U. They have them available. That's how you can actually buy and support these games. You just now, if you wanted to play that game leading up to Dread, you would have to be like, go to a fucking emulation site and pirate a ROM or spend, you know, $70 on eBay to like get a cartridge and hope that it works on your original hardware.
What if Pirates of the Caribbean was only available on HD DVD and never released on any other platform? So you would have to go out and buy Xbox 360 to get the HD DVD platform in order to watch Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm being ridiculous here, but this is what Nintendo's asking us to do, is to like go out, buy a Wii U, or go out and purchase a Game Boy Advance to play Metroid Fusion. And so like I speculate of Nintendo has all these data points of sales, data points of probably usage of how long people spend in these games. So maybe they're spending the money on Metroid Fusion, but they're maybe not completing it or not playing it for very long. And so you can create a narrative out of any of these numbers. And so maybe the narrative Nintendo has is, despite them selling, despite Metroid Fusion coming to jumping to the top of the charts, and despite it being an avenue of making money, maybe it just wasn't the narrative that you put together, and maybe it just wasn't feasible or made sense to the majority of consumers. I have no loyalty to any corporation generally.
Good.
But
Good.
yeah. But I'm just trying to think through what Nintendo might do in order to convince stakeholders and business leadership to shut down services like these when they're obviously making money in some capacity.
I always think about that sort of Disney Vault idea too, right? Because it seems like, and then this sort of maybe Western versus Japanese ideas, right? Like that they have this idea that they will be able to pull these things out at a later date and present them, and they'll be exciting, right? Like, doesn't it seem like that's something they're doing with this rollout of the N64 games? That it's like, by limiting the availability of these things, we increase the value. Yes, we're losing out on this money, but later we can pull, drop this.
Yeah, because you've been edging to fucking play Earthbound legally or whatever. You know what I mean? And you like fucking,
how would you?
I don't know.
What was it? You lose your load all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that we don't agree with it, like, but it feels like that's the mentality.
But if you're Nintendo, how would you know? Like this is what they do to add value to the properties. They create the excitement.
Because we're talking about Majora's Mask, and everybody is, right? Or whatever. Like,
or they release Mario games in a limited edition packaging with an expiration date.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it sells.
It's the McRib all over again, right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't think you want a McRib until you go 6 months without one, and then you're like, ooh, McRib sounds pretty fun.
I guess what I'm saying, like the parallel universe where Nintendo is pro-consumer, where they make their games available. Like, we don't know what that world is, and maybe that is profitable to Nintendo in that world. And they're assuming that creating artificial scarcity increases profits. Might be true because it is true, because we're fucking talking about Majora's Mask. But there's a completely different reality where they don't have to make these decisions and make these things available.
I think a good example is looking. You don't even have to look outside of Japan. Capcom has done so many re-releases of their older titles. I mean, Mega Man has been repackaged how many different ways?
Exactly.
But at the same time, if you were looking at this from a business perspective, the cost of those Mega Man collections gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every time they do it, because it's been released so many times, and you can grab them now on, I think, even Game Pass. Whereas Nintendo will hold on to something for a decade, sell it at $60, and Nintendo games hold their value more than any other publisher, because I agree, they do believe in that Disney Vault mentality. And in their mind, the idea of selling a Mario game for $5 just seems absurd.
It devalues it to them.
It devalues the brand as well as the game itself.
And I think you were onto something too, Patrick, because I think it's undeniably this kind of Western idea of the vault. I think that's where like the Disney Vault thing like comes from here, right? It's like withholding so that you can build up hype and then release, right? And you have that kind of stuff, right? I think that's a very Western idea, but I do think it's also a culturally Japanese thing, as well. And what you were touching on, I mean, look at the secondhand gaming market in Japan versus here. It's Japan, small island, compared to the US. They've got all their major cities that all have these huge gaming hubs, and you'll be able to, you look on eBay and you want to buy a 3DS right now, like you can't get a 3DS, an American 3DS for less than a new one anyway, for less than like $300 now. Right. And it's really higher than that for one that's like new in box. But if you want to get a Japanese one, they're like very cheap. It's like the secondhand gaming market in Japan hasn't seen the same kind of like speculative like gold rush that we've been seeing here. Right. And it's like in Japan, it's just like, okay, you just walk into a store and if you want an old game, you can get one. Right. So culturally in Japan, they don't really see the same issue here. And I think that the people that are calling all the shots as far as these servers getting shut down, what they want to do with game preservation, that's all NCL in Japan, right? That's Nintendo Co. Limited. And so it's like, I think that it just time and time again, we see how out of touch NCL is with the rest of the global Nintendo fandom, right? And like even their own departments at NOA and NOE. And so it's like, I do think that is part of it as well. And it's just culturally not as big of a deal in Japan to delist games or to shut down old servers like this. I mean, look at the Satellaview, right? Like can't get any of those games. Patrick, I do want to ask you because we've all kind of given our thoughts here, but as a recent 3DS owner, like you just got a 3DS recently, right? You've been checking out some games. What do you think about this news? Like, do you feel an urge to run out and like get games as quickly as you can now that you have this hardware for the first time?
Not especially. So I have I think anecdotally it's interesting to point out that yes, I recently acquired a 3DS, and I know at least one other person in our community, DCD, also did. I think there is probably a small amount of people, but people like DCD and I who weren't big handheld gamers prior to the Switch, and the Switch has converted us, and then we're like, oh, maybe it'd be fun to have a 3DS and play some of these entries I've missed. And so, I have got about 5 or 6 3DS games. It's quickly came up to that number. I'm not gonna rush out, but I definitely, knowing this, I think I'm gonna maybe pick up a few titles on the eShop in the next month or two, I don't know. I don't have a lot of money right now. So, I'm a little bit limited, which is a bummer. But I guess I also am not super worried about it because I'm not saying anybody should pirate a game, I guess, if you should legally own it, but if there's no other way to do it, and I really want to play something, then I guess I'll figure out a way to. So yeah, it is a bit of a bummer, but I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that. I haven't this hasn't sunk in for me, even though I know it's a month away or whatever, 2 months away or whatever. But
yeah. I get people are panic buying right now.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to resist that.
Yeah,
because I feel take a breath. I don't need to buy every game. I've got plenty of games I've bought and not played. So let me, for the 3DS included. So let me chill out for a minute.
The year is 2045. Nintendo just announced the Nintendo Switch eShop is closing down, and Super Switch Headz does a review on the stretchers. Because you can no longer get a physical copy of the stretchers, and we panic buy the stretchers, a Nintendo digital only game. Because
speaking of the stretchers, it just had a price reduction, by the way, a permanent price reduction. I thought about buying it, but again, no money, so I didn't do it.
Yeah, I think in the year 2045, physical copies of Disney Tsum Tsum Festival will be over $400.
Yeah, I'm banking on it.
Yes, I have one, so that sounds good to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sitting on a gold mine.
Is there anything else about this? I mean, we can come back to it if it ties in too, but there are a couple other things we wanted to talk about related that have happened recently. We've talked about this a little bit on the show too, these sort of copyright strikes on some of the YouTube channels that post Nintendo music, and the just lack of availability of Nintendo music, which is now even less available as Gilva Sunner's channel is gone from YouTube.
I'm seeing a parallel there.
They made all these strikes recently,
Yeah.
right? And then they announced the eShop closing. It is weird the timing of this, but it's awesome. And like you said, it has all these parallels of like there's no way to legally, at least here, purchase even a lot of this music, much less stream it. And I know Matthew, you kind of pointed out somebody somewhere online. Again, this ties into maybe some Japanese issues or like practices. Do you think you can expound on that any?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
No, you don't remember
what I said.
You were talking about how the Japanese music industry is kind of set in the past. Right?
Oh,
is that
yeah.
what you're talking about?
Yeah, just the very briefly, the idea of like the music industry in Japan today is similar to how it was in the West, in the US in the 80s, where people put band posters. There are boy bands everywhere. People buy digital media, CDs, all of that stuff is kind of regular in Japan. From my understanding, there was I think it was a Guardian article that talked about what we're discussing now, which is what the music industry is like which is the background of maybe why Nintendo might not put their digital songs, make them available online, because a lot of these Nintendo songs are available, but they're only in physical media.
The composers themselves might be resistant to releasing this stuff for free on Spotify and that sort of thing, because they value their music differently than maybe people do in the US or something.
I mean, I do know that there is no concept of fair use as we know it in Japan. That is a foreign concept over there. And I mean, I've seen personally, when I was last in Japan, luckily 2 years ago, there was a whole section of video game soundtracks that you could buy that aren't available on streaming services. But you've seen Square do some good work in this.
Yeah.
You've seen Atlas do some good work on putting their soundtracks online. Sega's amazing on their streaming services. But once again, Nintendo sort of lagging behind creatively on offering that, and that is definitely something that they can improve, to say the least. Improve by starting, I would say. That available.
Yeah, so I think it just I think that's really interesting that you're to hear you point out the idea of fair use being different, because I think that maybe can connect with one of the other topics that we want to talk about. And unless there's anything else on music, we're just kind of doing a big overview, and we can come back to any of this. But
we're just listing fuck Nintendo things
that just happened, right? Like the Nintendo Switch Sports test.
Wii Sports 4.
So Nintendo Switch Sports, or Wii Sports 4 as we're calling it, just recently had this online play test over this past weekend of February 18th through the 20th, where you could you had to it was really weird. You had to download a code on My Nintendo and then enter that code on the website.
You had to register to get the code in the first place, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then enter that code. And
My Nintendo was an item on the My Nintendo store, which cost 0 platinum points. So you buy that, which then gives you a code.
Yeah.
That you put into your Nintendo Switch.
Right.
And then it downloads this app right onto your Switch, and for 45-minute periods, for 5 different 45-minute periods over the past weekend, you could log in and play a select amount of games with a select amount of things, right?
On random. Yeah.
For Nintendo Switch Sports. And the reason we're talking about it here is that they, there was all this language, I guess, is maybe partly why they did this registration thing, right? It wasn't just a very simple click to download. You had to theoretically agree to all these terms, which were that, you're agreeing not to share information about it, including screenshots or video footage from the game on social media, or the phrasing is weird, and we should talk about that. Like, the some of the wording was, by registering to participate in the online playtest, you agree not to share information about the online playtest publicly, including the sharing of screenshots or video footage from the game on social media.
Yeah, which of course is what you want to do to drum up hype for a new game that's coming out soon, right?
Right. So there's
stop anyone from talking about it or posting video about it.
There's of course the like conspiracy theory that is that like they didn't disable, like in Smash you can't record video using the record video button, but I think you could in this.
Yeah, you could. I did. Yeah,
which
I did a
seems
lot.
like a
I streamed it.
Like it seems like a thing you would do on this, right? Like if you have that ability to not enable recording, you don't enable recording. But they didn't, which is weird.
That makes it our fault.
Yeah, right.
Isn't it always though?
Yeah, maybe they just want a paper trail so they can get the Nintendo ninjas to start picking off people one by one. But yeah, no, it's weird. I mean, a lot of people were streaming it, myself included. I was just kind of like in a fuck Nintendo mode because this was the weekend that they were like, we're closing all the stores. And I was like, fuck Nintendo. And I was just like, all right, I'm just going to stream it, right? What I did do first was buy Day Pass to Wii Sports Club and start by streaming Wii Sports Club on my Wii U and then just moved over. So maybe the algorithm won't get me. We'll see. Nintendo ninjas, don't shoot me.
But you weren't the only person. Like you said, lots of people. I mean, and
like Bob Wolf streamed it and like all these like big YouTubers were streaming it. But it's like, but some people were like super adherent to it, right? Like Game Explain put up a 45-minute long video of like his face playing the game without any footage, and he's like, I'm not going to even talk about it because they said we can't even talk about it. So he's like, I don't know why you guys are tuning in. And it was just like, what is this? What are you doing, dude? And then also
don't waste my time with that content.
Yeah, exactly.
45 minutes later, no, that was good.
Yeah,
that was a waste of time.
Please, Andre from Game Explain, please join us on the show. But I mean, but also like all these people streamed it and they did nothing, right? So it's like, what is this? Was this just like peacocking? Are they just like trying to get less out there, knowing that they full well weren't going to actually do anything about it? Are they biding their time and then we're all going to get fucked? Like, what is this?
What do you think, Dodo? What's on your mind?
I think that Nintendo might actually be doing the rare thing of doing an actual beta test for their beta test. I just think they have no confidence in the quality of the product as it currently stands.
Yeah.
And so they're putting draconian rules to try to stop people from posting it online.
From like shitting on it or whatever?
Yeah, because I think they literally wanted to see, can our online services handle this traffic? And we don't really want to show the game, but we have to get people playing it to see if we can release it. So I get that. I mean, there's all these Japanese publishers who are like, you can only stream the first 2 chapters of this game. And that's for spoiler reasons primarily. I don't know how you could spoil a sports title. But
what comes after Game and Set? You know, I don't know. I don't know what comes after Game.
As of right now, I can't legally tell you.
Legally.
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like Matt just jokes about it legally, right? Like they say this on their thing, right? They say that, you know, you're agreeing not to share info, but what can they do? I mean, I guess that,
and that's why I streamed it. I was like, what the fuck are you gonna do to
at most they can take down your thing and you get in trouble for that, but they apparently aren't doing that yet, and I don't know that they will. And I do think that you're right, Dodo. And when I first heard about this, it was definitely like, you remember when they did the Mario Tennis Aces test, and it was just garbage. Like the connection was piss poor. I was kind of afraid that this might be like that, and that's why they were doing this, because they aren't confident, because they don't do, you know, worldwide internet well.
You want to know what the irony was? I had 0 hitches the entire time, and I had a great time playing Wii Sports 4.
Right, but you can't say that.
No,
we can't talk about how much fun it was. We can't say that
we're not going to show
bowling
video.
Was the best.
Yeah, I'm not going to show video, but bowling was the best.
Matthew Stoner.
Roll 212.
I'll tell you this: I had 16 people in a room playing bowling, and there was 0 lag, and everything went off without a hitch. Right, like the fucking shit was tight.
You can't say that Chambara was a surprisingly fun experience.
What we can say is that they're using FSR, which is something we did not talk about in the news, which is something I wanted to put in the news and I totally forgot because it was a big news week. But
explain.
Just in the fine print for like the legal jargon they have to put out when they put a game up on the eShop. Nintendo is actually using AMD's FSR technology, which is like a DLSS equivalent within Switch Sports. So that actually kind of proves that the Switch is capable of running FSR, which means they can basically do AI assisted upscaling. So hopefully more games going forward will use that. But sorry, we're talking about fuck Nintendo, so we don't have to talk about that right now. But yeah, anyway, it was beyond weird. Like a lot of this stuff with the Switch Sports stuff is just like really weird. And it was weird that they made a big to do about it. And then I guess maybe just Twitter made a big to do about it, but they put it on their own site, right? And so it's just these strange restrictions are what kind of like characterize Nintendo these days, I think.
I mean, always though, right? Like, I mean, they've always been pretty controlling about. I think that's one of the interesting things is that they've always been controlling about how what's on their platform. Back in the NES
the Nintendo
days.
seal of quality era.
And
the lockout chip.
Yeah.
And the we don't have to talk about it because we might do an episode on this sort of history of this, but the creators program of like that same sort of fair use thing where you couldn't share their content online, and that wasn't that long ago, wasn't it? Like 2018 or something when that ended, or 20 somewhere around there. I might be off by a few years, but like they just are a little bit behind the curve on some of these things, it feels like, at least especially to maybe because of the cultural differences, maybe it doesn't feel that way, but you also, I feel like I've heard some people say that no, even people in Japan kind of think they're behind on some of this stuff. So
yeah, I just think it's the overall inconsistency from publisher to publisher, from developer to developer. We were just talking about music, of having like Capcom put out all these collections and all these music collections, and then Nintendo doing something different, as a way different from the rest of the industry. I remember like keeping beta tests off of social media or play tests off social media isn't new. I mean, software has that with like new Windows versions, new like iOS versions. Having that stuff, these beta versions are not being on social media is not anything new. Just to get that out of the way, I don't think this is what they're doing is different. But what is different from some of the other play tests, like when Microsoft did their Halo Infinite play tests, they were like, yeah, put it on social media. But all they did was just slap beta in the bottom right corner. So
right.
anything, if you have hiccups, if you had lag, if you had quits, if you had crashes, you could just say, oh, it's in beta. And then maybe that's what Nintendo could do. But if you put beta on a Nintendo brand, maybe that does, in their mind, decrease the quality.
So when you have a really crappy Mario Tennis Aces beta test, you don't claim it as a beta. Yeah,
right?
It's like it's a weird catch-22, right?
It totally is. Yeah.
I think before we kind of wrap up this segment, I do think that we should go back a little bit to the whole idea of game preservation, right? With the closure of these stores. One thing we didn't talk about earlier was downloadable content or just updates, right? I know like Xenoblade Chronicles X, you can buy that game physically, but if you don't download like multiple gigs of updates, that game runs really, really poorly. You know what I mean? So if somebody buys a physical copy of that game in, 2025 to play on their Wii U, they're not going to be able to play that game properly, right? It's going to be broken and a buggy mess, right? Because of how the game was shipped on disc. And, that's something that scares me about the future of the Switch library as well. So many games release with just, part of the game and the rest you download as a day one patch, right? That's kind of like what happens when servers go then.
Got
but
it.
Then also
David, buy a Wii U, buy Xenoblade Chronicles X, download all of the DLC, hoard it for 20 years, and then
Yeah.
sell it on 2035 eBay.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
It's like a PS4 with PT.
Yeah,
I
right.
just-
Exactly.
I just feel like that shows that the whole physical people saying this is why we need physical media are just wrong. Like, I don't think we need to hold on. I don't think we need to hold on to physical or hold physical media up as a solution anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you want to have physical media, good for you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to like destroy that, though. Maybe I do, because we don't need tons of newly manufactured stuff. But like, like, but there's got to be another solution then, right?
Patrick, I'm just alluding to what you're saying, or kind of connecting the dots. It's like physical media isn't a solution because ultimately downloadable content solves problems that come from physical media. Just
Yes.
the lack of like their CDs, and you can't update the stuff that's already on them, or the cartridges. You can't update them. So you have these downloadable content to fix the problems in the development process. So they're now interconnected, which brings new problems.
Yes.
And on the subject of game preservation, I think it's important, if it's not explicitly said, it should be, that everything that is getting shut down has been backed up.
Yeah,
And
that was gonna-
the
That's
online
the solution,
community,
right?
the online community has done Nintendo's job for them. Every Wii U title, every Wii U update, every piece of Wii U DLC, same with the 3DS, all of that is available somewhere if you know where to look. You may edit the following statement, but the Internet Archive is your friend.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all there. It's all available if you need it for when the day comes that everything is shut down. The fans have done your job for you. And Wii U emulation is at a very mature state and will only get better as the years go on. 3DS the same way. If you have one of those fancy flip screen phones, that's not a bad way to play 3DS games in the future.
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out there. But it's important that the community has done this all and continues with new consoles, including the Nintendo Switch, to preserve games so that they'll be available for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
You would assume, based on the Giga Leak, that Nintendo isn't making it available, but they have backups of all this stuff, right? And based on their whole vault idea too.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, because we know that they had, when these big leaks happened, they had all sorts of weird stuff that you'd think maybe they don't even need to keep. All these like, half finished things or early versions of
Prototypes.
things.
Yeah.
So clearly they are keeping it, or probably they're keeping it, but they're keeping it under lock and key. And
Or in a fucking closet that they can't be bothered to go dust off and open up. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Might not be so nefarious. It might just be negligence, right? But either way, I mean, like, what I just think that is what the solution is, right? Because you're right. It's like these eShops, whether we like it or not, the servers will eventually go down. We know we've got a date now for the 3DS and the Wii U. But yeah, like you said, every physical game has a ROM dumped. Every game that you could buy from the eShop has a version uploaded somewhere for all of these games. And, for the 3DS, it's like most of these are never going to see the light of day on any other console because of what the hardware is. By the nature of the hardware, it's got two screens. One of them's a touch screen. The games are made to be vertical. You know what I mean? Like, we're never going to see most of these games on the Switch, and most of them shouldn't come. To Kirby's, fucking the one where you draw, like that would not be that fun on the Switch, right? But it worked on the DS because of how it's set up, right? And so it's like, I just think it's like we kind of like have a moral and ethical responsibility to pirate all these games once Nintendo shuts off these servers.
Preserve the stretchers. Preserve the stretchers.
Right. I'm not saying go out and just, we Nintendo gave the go ahead, right? But it's like, once all this stuff, you can't think that, all these games that are tied to the DSiWare store. That's something that nobody talks about. But the 3DS currently has the entire DSiWare store built into it. We're losing all that as well whenever all this shuts down. So that's just all these games that so many people put their hearts and soul into that will never see the light of day unless you pirate them, right? So I don't know. I just feel like the morality becomes very gray. This anti-piracy argument that people have, I just can't see it holding up in a world where stuff is just literally ripped away from you, where you can't purchase it anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
I had a vision in my mind the years, again, 2045, and I'm trying to play Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I'm trying to show my new child, and you got to download Dolphin. And then you have to download this ROM. And then you have to follow this Wikipedia page in order to get the best settings to run at 4K at the highest frame rate. But hold on, we got to make sure that everything's compatible and everything's all the DLC. And then my brand new child is like, I just want to play Mario. I don't have time for this fucking
Let's just play a new game. Yeah.
Dad, nobody likes Xenoblade Chronicles.
There's a reason it died on the Wii.
Look at these big robots.
I mean, Dodo, if you had to help people with some sort of resource in how to prepare for such a situation where one might need to play game backups after these shops go down when there's no other way to access these games, what are some resources that you would recommend?
Guest of your own show, MVG, has just posted a video about that very subject. I recommend going to his YouTube channel. There are several sites that have up-to-date homebrew settings for both the 3DS and the Wii U. Off the top of my head, I don't remember them, but I'll be sure to send them to you so you can put them in the show notes. But there are places you can go to and say, I have this model console, how do I get it prepared to have games installed? And they will walk you through every step of the way. I'll say the 3DS is very robust in that regard. And then with the Wii U, if you have a modern Windows PC, you can get started right there and put Thomas the Tank Engine in your copy of Breath of the Wild if you want to do so. Or just play classic Wii U games or classic Wii games. I mean, Dolphin was previously mentioned. Dolphin is the gold standard in modern emulation these days.
I don't have my Wii U modded at the current moment per se, but I do have the virtual Wii on my Wii U modded. And, that's how I play GameCube games that I own. I own the games, but I play them through an HDMI cable on my Wii U currently. Yeah. And I would say if you're concerned about some of this stuff, and you do want to prepare your console to be homebrew accessible, I would look into it in the coming months, just because a lot of, I know at least some of the exploits that the 3DS uses in order to make this possible require games to be downloaded from the eShop, right? Or like a free game.
The easiest current method is an eShop method. There is a fallback method that doesn't require the eShop.
Okay, that's good.
So even afterwards, there will be a backup method. But right now, the easiest is to grab a certain title from the eShop, which I won't say on this show. Pokemon Picross. But yeah, just go ahead, and I would recommend MVG checking him out, and then once again, I'll provide some links to sites to visit.
That's
for
MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer.
That's correct.
Yep. Well, any other final thoughts? This was kind of a talk about a few different things, and so if there's anything we kind of didn't mention you want to hit before we go.
I think big picture for me, I joke this as like I have no corporation loyalty. It's like I like these things, and I expect as profits increase that they will do right by the consumer. But I'm always proven that never exists. The consumer is never in mind. It's always about that big bucks.
Profits.
And so I'm just reminded of like I will play these games. And I will access them however means I can, because I want to enjoy the artistic expression that the creators wanted me to experience. and I have no fucking loyalties to anyone.
No masters. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, no gods. I just wish, like, of course we do this Nintendo podcast, and we're fans of Nintendo, and I'm a big fan of the Nintendo Switch, but it doesn't like absolve them of wrongdoing, and they just prove time and time again how like out of touch they can be. And the worst thing for me is like is that they just don't ever have any alternative in mind when they stop stuff. And Google to me has the same problem too, right? Like, I mean, I see Google shut down services all the time. Services that I used every single day. They're just like, we're done next month. And you're like, fuck, man. Why did I buy into your fucking shit? You know what I mean? Why did I like build my like listening habits around Google Play Music? Or like, why did I, any number of services, Google Reader back in the day, right? It's just like, and so it's, obviously that, stuff is fleeting. People move on in life in general, right? But I just wish that Nintendo would kind of come around to the idea of how important their history is to people, right? Because we've got a whole generation of kids that were raised on this shit, right? That like to them, it's not just, oh, you got my $60 in the 80s, and so who cares anymore, right? It's like, no. Every day when I was a kid, I would play fucking Fester's Quest on the NES, and I won it on the goddamn NSO. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, right? It's like it's such a crucial part when you're working with pieces of media and pieces of art. Like some of that becomes imprinted on people when they use that stuff, and it makes their lives into what their lives become. That's what good art does, right? And so I hope at some point Nintendo does use their massive amounts of profits that they make year on year, and especially in the Switch era, to do a bit of an about face in terms of how they view their legacy content, and start to give it like some of the historical and artistic merit that I think that it really deserves.
And let us stream Switch Sports.
Yeah. And now to 5 hours of uncut Switch Sports footage.
Sorry to bring this up. I just think like what you said is like it's a conflict of values. Like it's a values of art, but it's also a value of like this idea of like roots. Like for me, like I value if I'm friends with people, I want to know about them. I want to learn about them. And I really value depth in people. And I also value depth in the things that I experience. So as we were talking about Metroid Dread, like I love Metroid. I want to play all of them because it aligns with my value of depth. I deeply care about the characters, the artists, the composers, and I want to like I want to consume all these things. And I feel like there's what you're saying rang true to me. I don't know if this is what your values are, David, but it sounds like you also just value the idea of having the company that make the media that impacts your life also care about that experience well into the future.
Yeah, or at least just make it available, man. At least just let me play the game that I have nostalgia for. Everybody mod your Wii U and 3DS.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and talk about all the games that we've been playing recently. The games I want to talk about haven't played recently. I started playing Dandara, which is a Metroidvania type game, Brazilian developer. It's really interesting. Like the way you move in this game is really interesting, and you kind of like point to a different platform, but it has to be that one that's not not the same level you're on. You have to like point to one that's perpendicular or above you. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of weird like movement in the game, and then the combat feels kind of slow because you kind of shoot these arrows, but you have to charge them. at least the initial combat. I think that it's starting to feel a little bit faster with more upgrades. So it's a really weird mix of you can quickly move around, but sometimes it takes a while to have the combat. So I've beaten the first boss, which took me some tries. It was challenging. So I'm enjoying the game though, but it's definitely unique. And also the story is kind of interesting because it's based on a Brazilian sort of folk hero who led a slave revolt, Dandara. What else? Played a little bit of Mario Golf Super Rush with some of the community, and I was garbage.
Not good at that game.
DCD and Kyle, good at the game.
Yes.
Me, not so much. I was also a little bit intoxicated. That did not help. Don't play that when you're not at your sharpest. Especially because they were both like, oh, I'm real rusty. And I'm like, okay, y'all are like in the around par, and I'm like plus 14 over here or whatever it was.
That was me and Jay when we played against those two. Yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm terrible. And I'm like, I don't think y'all get to say that when I'm also fun. What else to mention? I played Nintendo Switch Sports Online playtest, but we can't talk about it.
Come on, give us your impression. Don't be a pussy.
Could talk about it, then you might say things like, I had a lot of fun and the 45 minutes flew by. And I meant to play it on the next day, but like I was like, okay, it's almost 9, and then I got caught up doing something, and I was like, oh, it's 9:45. I missed my freaking second chance here. I wasn't like, not a big deal, but I was really on the fence about purchasing that game. Like I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, but I really enjoyed it. So
yes, it's good. It's very good.
And we can talk about it more if somebody else played it. The other thing I wanted to mention is I started playing Pikmin 2 on our Wii, which is another game that won't be available for legal purchase come whatever, March 2023 or whatever.
It's on the Wii U right now.
Yeah, you can buy it on the Wii U. And because my son loves Pikmin, he just fell in love with Pikmin 3. We played through Hey Pikmin on the 3DS, and he wanted to play Pikmin 2 next. He's having a lot of hard time with the Wiimote because he's not played a Wii game with a Wiimote. So I don't know how that's going to go. I'm not sure if it'll be me doing it or if he will actually stick with it and get good at it.
I love the Wii controls that they added into Pikmin 1 and 2. I think those actually worked really, really well. The way that you kind of like, it's just easy to like sweep across the
I'm
area.
not having a problem with it. I think he's just having a problem holding the Wiimote correctly and like, and like just, it's like, no, you got to point it up at the sensor bar. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, there's a little bit of a disconnect. He's just not used to it. So, those are some of the things I've been playing.
Yeah, I started playing that Sony franchise, Horizon, Forbidden West. It's pretty. I like it. It's fun so far. I think I only got an hour into it, and it's fine.
Right.
It's fine. We'll see.
That's what I've been hearing. Is that it's like pretty good.
I'm not sure. I can't quite place it. I'm waiting for it to sink its teeth into me. It's robot teeth, but it hasn't yet. Seems like the gameplay loop is very similar. We'll see. I did beat Sifu finally. Sifu is fucking tight, so I've been playing through that quite a bit, and it's such a fun brawler with fighting game mechanics. If you have a PC or I think it's also available on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, maybe. I don't know. It's just like so fun.
Can you expound upon that brawler with? I've always felt like, why don't brawlers have more fighting game mechanics? So they did it here.
Yeah, they did it with Sifu, and it's got like combos, and like a
complicated inputs or like
complicated inputs and combos that you can
why don't more brawlers do this? Yeah,
based on the other moves and special moves and how you unlock special moves. And it's got a skill tree. It's also a roguelike, and the level design, they have the level 3 is a museum, and how they introduce new characters and how they introduce some of the bosses based on the location of a museum by having like installations. Like the boss is an artist and how she creates art based on the different like emotional ranges is the background of these brawler fights. It's an incredible piece of media. The museum level in Sifu, it's beautiful. Would recommend
Awesome.
if you like brawlers. And it's fucking hard. It's hard. It's hard as shit.
But you beat it, so you're a pro gamer.
Yeah. Give me my plaque. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll go next. I've been playing, like I said at the top, a ton of games this week across a number of platforms. I did do a stream, like I said before, of the WiiU eShop, where I kind of like prowled the WiiU eShop specifically for free games and Pushmo World. I knew I was going to buy Pushmo World, so I did buy that and play that a little bit on stream. I'm a big fan of Pushmo on the 3DS, and so I wanted to play the WiiU version. Unfortunately, a lot of the bonus or extra content of that game is locked behind the now defunct Miiverse, which is something we didn't talk about this episode, but Nintendo killed Miiverse, which is also a very sad thing that nerfed a lot of the games that are on the Wii U and 3DS. But still had a good time with it nonetheless. Also bought a 24-hour pass to Wii Sports Club. If you weren't familiar, the way that Wii Sports Club works on the Wii U, it's basically like an HD remake of Wii Sports for the Wii. And there are two different ways to buy it. You can buy each game individually for $10 each to have forever, or you can buy a 24-hour pass for $199 that is all the games for $2. And so I was like, well, I'm kind of doing this to stream. I have Wii Sports for the Wii. I don't really like need Wii Sports Club, even though it does have Wii Motion Plus enabled, which is a total game changer. But I was like, you know what? For a stream, I'll do the $2 pack. Had a great time. So I did a stream of that, and then I also played Wii Sports 4 just after that, which we've talked about. Great stuff. I love Chambara. I love bowling. I love that bowling is a fucking battle royale now. Spoiler, sorry, Nintendo, don't at me. But it's great.
It's in the trailer. It's fine.
Yeah. And then also because I had a little bit of time left on that Wii Sports Club day pass, I invited Bordan over to my house, who came over on Saturday, right? Yeah. And we played Wii Sports Club together, and then we also did the Switch Sports online play test together, which you can play with two people. And so playing doubles tennis online with randoms was so much fucking fun. It's going to be a game changer, especially if you're like living with somebody or you're in a relationship or you want to play with your partner or whatever. I feel like Switch Sports is going to be a great game for that, for like both of you to jump on and play against other people. Sounds like a ton of fun. So I love that. Streamed a little bit of Cyberpunk 2077. Actually beat the game on stream. I didn't realize when I had left off the game many months ago, almost a whole year ago, I didn't realize that I was on the last quest whenever I quit. So I was like, oh yeah, we'll do this quest. And then it was like, this is a point of no return. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm just beating this game now. So I'll go back and like do more side quests now that I've beaten it, or maybe I'll start another run.
David, you beat a game.
Oh, I've beaten multiple games on stream this year so far. Yeah. That's my New Year's resolution, is to actually beat games this year. But I'm not going to force myself. But yeah, so Cyberpunk 2077 can recommend. I love that game. I think that game is fantastic. And the new patch makes it really good. Real quick, we're going to just fire through some of these. Getsu Fumiden, Undying Moon. Stream some of that along with Spelunky 2. Been playing more of that. Been playing more of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Played a little bit of Demon Tilt as well, which is a really fun hell-inspired pinball game, which I would recommend for the Switch. Let's see. I totally spanked some people online in Tricky Towers, which was a blast to do, because nobody plays that game online. So whenever you run into somebody, they're like the only person you play against. And so I just beat them over and over and over and over again because they bought it on some sale like a week ago or something. And now they're like, oh, fuck, do I even like this game anymore? Because I just pounded them into the ground. And And then, you know what? I think that's about it. I played a little bit of Backgammon online and Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. Jordan and I, we also played some other games. We played Hanafuda together. So that was a ton of fun to play with Jordan. And lots of stuff like that. I played so much goddamn Wii Sports this weekend that my entire body was sore. I'll say that. But anyway, those are the games I've been playing. What about you, Dodo? What have you been playing these days?
On the Switch, it's mostly been the classic Wrestling Empire, I believe is the title of it. Currently, the best wrestling game on the Switch will probably end up being the best wrestling game on the Switch. And then I've also been playing on my Retro Flag GPI, which is my Raspberry Pi enabled retro gaming console. Been playing a lot of Final Fantasy IX. It's my first time going through that one. So I've
Such a good one.
Really enjoying playing that on the road and on the go. And then been playing Madden 22 now that that's on Xbox Game Pass. So I always play Maddens when they are free. So I wait till after the Super Bowl, and then Madden season for me is then. So just getting into that one. And it is fun to play the games. And then I play Ultimate Team, and I realize I hate Ultimate Teams. So I just go back to playing the game.
Who do you play as in Madden?
Oh, gee. I mean, look, I'm in Connecticut now, but I'm New Orleans Saints till I die.
Yeah.
So, I got to run the Saints through the franchise on the easiest setting, have them go undefeated, win the Super Bowl, and it just makes me feel good about myself when I'm state.
That's fun.
Very good. Very good indeed.
Well, then, I think that's it for this episode. Thank you so much, Michael Domangue, for coming on once more to talk about controversial Nintendo decisions.
My pleasure.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co for our website. Thanks to Porteroy for our wonderful music. And if you're looking for me, Patrick, online, most places I am PDYX or PDYX123 on Twitch.
I'm Matthew on Twitter, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much ever on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Michael? Where can people find you online?
You can catch me at Twitter and Instagram under the same handle. That is mdomangue, MDOMANGUE.
Love to hear it. We've also got our show on social media, which you can follow at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. You can catch us on your web browser by typing in www.switchheadz.com. And we've also got a Discord and a Facebook group, both of which we'll have links to in the description of this show. What a wonderful thing. Thanks again, Michael. That was a great episode on just when it's appropriate to pirate Nintendo games. So turns out it's April 2023. We'll be back next week with another great episode. So don't nobody go nowhere. Make sure you follow us on all those things so you have all the updates on what to do. And again, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, man. We're really growing the video content. I'm always throwing in little Easter eggs and little bonus bits into the YouTubes as well. So shoot us a subscribe, even if you listen to us on other platforms. Folks, that's going to do it. We're going to go ahead and log off now, but we love you very much. We'll see you next week. Get the vaccine. Bye-bye.